Uh, Welcome to this class, and for the 13 HR people who are in the 1921 batch, this you should accept as the beginning of semester 3. Yes, the blowing of a car horn or something going on. Why is there a disturbance there? Audio disturbance. All of you, please mute yourselves. Are you ready to go? There will be a time when I will ask you to unmute yourself. The reason is I will be asking you some questions to which I want to know answers from you 13 people. Specifically, because for you, this is semester 3, and you need to understand some of those key issues. So our subject is challenges for HR in India post COVID-19. Welcome to the subject, and the expected learnings from this program. The first one is going to be this one, namely, what types of knowledge should you be keeping with you when you get into SIM 3 and you get into your jobs? What should HR people actually possess? The second issue is one of understanding what are the additional responsibilities because you happen to be in a post-COVID area. The third one is once you settle into your jobs, I know there are a few people from the 1820 batch also over here. I saw Vinay Tandel and I saw Aisha also there. Maybe more have come in. Just understand that you people are going to get into your jobs very soon now. Madhya also has raised a hand. Okay, fine. Uh, Understand that as you get into your jobs, you're going to require a certain amount of special or perhaps enhanced type of knowledge on what to do. Now, you may have that knowledge with you, may have those skills with you, but in the end, you will have to revive them and use them for the post-COVID time. So let's go to this question. What does managing HR mean to all of you? Particularly, this is focused on the 13 students who haven't yet done any HR work themselves, except for their SIP. If you have an answer, unmute yourself and please answer. Start thinking, what does HR mean? What does managing HR mean? Come on, I want to hear some answers. What does managing HR mean? You're still lost?
So managing the human force for the organization,
Oh, what does that mean?
specifically people's needs and their expectations,
Uh-huh. Okay.
and directing the workforce to a particular goal.
Hmm. So that, what's that
So that
particular goal?
the company so it helps the company to achieve the organizational goals which are laid down.
Okay. All right.
Good afternoon, sir. Madhiha here.
Yeah, Madhya.
Okay, so managing HR is basically managing the human side of the organization, in which you are managing your employees and helping them to achieve their targets and their goals for the well-being of the organization. So that's how the HR helps.
Madhya, all you've said is a motherhood statement. This is
Mhm.
what they should be doing. These are our ideals. At the end of it all, what are you guys expected to do when you step into your workplace?
To understand the business first
And
and then get into managing people.
again, managing people. So what? Every manager at the job in any company also manages people, no? They have only three things to manage. One is the process, the second is the money, and the third is the people who work for him or her. So, what are you doing different as when you talk about managing people? Start thinking. I'm going ahead with this presentation because we have a limited time of an hour and a half. But start applying your mind to some of these issues. What the hell does managing HR mean? Here, the first thing is managing the people at work, and the meaning for it is managing everything that they experience at work. And everything that they experience at work, it start thinking, as I said, these are the things that people are going to be facing right through their lifetime in a job. Any job, anywhere, you will go through these sequential milestones, as I call them. You will have to get interviewed to get into a job, and then you will get appointed, and then you will start working. If you're a fresher, you will have to undergo training. If you're already an experienced person, then you'll have to go through a period of probation and then confirmation. There'll be salaries paid to you, plus your entitlements and your bonuses. If you have done a good job, then you will get a performance appraisal that's befitting, and then you'll also go through a appraisal and a service and a salary increment to follow. Maybe you will get promoted if you have done a very good job and there's a position in a level higher than the current one. And then if there is a need for you somewhere else, you'll probably get transferred somewhere. Maybe from here to Kolkata, or maybe from here to Chennai, or maybe it could be to a tier 2, tier 3 city also. Someplace like Ranchi. Lalu Prasad Yadav stays there in the jail, by the way. And then a time will come when you will retire, resign, or die. So these are things that happen to every single individual. Think about the fact that you as HR people have to manage each of these. Now when you talk about managing people's expectations, what the hell are people expecting? When they get into a job, what do they expect? Start thinking. Every person expects from his or her employer a certain set of things that will happen to him or her based on that person's knowledge, skills, experience, and capabilities. Only these 4 things. It doesn't matter what the person's pedigree is. It doesn't matter whether the person's fair or tall or short or dark. Sure, you need a good job. Everybody does. My 18, 20 batchwalas are also looking for good jobs. You people will be in the same phase when you come next year into the 1921 batch. You need a good salary, at least respectable enough to keep your body and soul together, and perhaps to look after some of your financial commitments for yourself and your family. You need to grow in your career as time goes on. Now, there are a few things that you will not be able to do a thing on. HR is not going to teach you these things, but this is where your own personal caliber is going to come in. And these are 3 important ones. How do you create a happy workplace? How can you make sure there is social interactions and that people's future is secured? But these are things that people will expect you to do. Because you are an HR person, you're a qualified person, you're an educated person, and you've got a job sitting in the head office of a company. Aren't you expected to do all these things? So when a person manages employees, you're really trying to manage their expectations. And Kedar, this comes back to you when you talk about employees' expectations. What the hell are those expectations? These are the expectations. Can you think of the 7th one? I can only think of six. The first 3, of course, these 3 we know. You've got to do it. You've got to appoint a person. You've got to give the fellow a job to do. You've got to pay a salary at the end of the month. And reasonably speaking, every person will have a certain amount of growth, including promotions and including transfers and salary increases. But what about these? Are these your job also? And of course, these are your jobs. But against these expectations, you have something which is a very controlled environment. Here's the controlled environment. Your challenge is going to be the organization within which you are working, as well as your employees are working. And your challenge is going to be your biggest dilemma. How do you balance all your behaviors against the company's business? Ultimately, business that runs you and everybody else in the company. They earn their salaries only because the company is doing well. And there's a third aspect to it. What knowledge must you have, therefore? Start thinking. Unmute yourself if you have an answer. What knowledge must HR people have? Given the fact that your primary expectations are to look after employees' expectations, those 6 things that we have talked about: good job, good salary, happiness, etc., etc. So, what knowledge must you have? What will you carry away from Reserve Management Institute in order to justify your salary when you get into a job? Either this year now or it's next year once you graduate from the institute. What knowledge must you have? It can't be just looking nice and talking gracefully and uh, whatever else you want to describe as being a good person. Sure, that's important. But knowledge means actual knowledge, the things that you know, you're convinced, and your abilities will speak for themselves. Any answers to this question? What knowledge must you have? So here goes. Think about these words. Anthropology. Anthropology is the study of human beings in a collective whole. How people develop, how their customs and beliefs are developed. Sociology, which means industrial sociology in particular, means understanding how people behave within a society. And an organization is a microcosm of society. A microcosm means it's a small segment. It's as if you've reduced the entire size of society into one organization. It may have 20 people, it may have 200 people, or it may have 2,000 people. The third one you should be aware of is economics, and particularly labor economics. Now, I'll tell you why labor economics is important. What salaries you pay your employees will depend to a large extent on what your labor economics are and what the economics of the country are. The kind of salaries that people were getting until February or March this year, companies are now looking behind and wondering whether they shouldn't have given any increments because it's not worth it. They're talking about cutting down on their salaries. They're asking people to go. You've heard all about that. Hopefully, you're keeping in touch with the news going around throughout the world. Forget about what's happening in the USA. Donald Trump is an idiot. But look at what's happening in our country. How many companies have already started laying off people? The lakhs of people who have migrated back, how many are coming back? Because it's suddenly, what do they call it? Lockdown and the unlock one, which is going on here in Mumbai. Are the same people coming back and the same numbers of people coming back? No. What subject? Psychology. I've spoken enough about this subject. We've done an OB class all of last year, as well as organizational psychology. And there are a few other things that you need to know. In terms of knowledge, these are the 4 key subjects. 99.99% all of you are going to get jobs here in our country. Unless you have a very devout ambition to go abroad and work over there, that's another story. But otherwise, you're going to get a job over here. So don't you need to know this country's heritage, its culture, the country in which you're going to work for the next 40, 45 years? Think about this subject, counseling in an industrial or commercial setting. If you have to handle employees' problems, Alicia Pinto, if you remember, you had done a SIP on the subject of counseling, particularly
Yes.
the subjects of depression come and stress come. Counseling in an industrial setting. You need to know how to counsel because they're going to come to you. A lady employee comes to you and say, I've got a Me Too complaint to make about some fellow who's working in my department. He's been sending me foul messages. How are you going to handle that? You've got to be able to counsel that person first. You can't just keep creating solutions and say, okay, I'll throw that fellow out. That's not good enough. You've got to understand what's the story behind it, and there is a huge fund of counseling involved in it. Then comes, of course, you need to know your own organization and what are its HR expectations. Maybe you have a fund of information and knowledge and views about everything that you want to do in HR. But this organization's expectations are entirely different. What do you do in such a situation? In SEM3, you're going to have a gentleman coming in to cover labor laws for you. Labor laws. Today, the labor laws of this country are still relevant and still able to drive the business. They are the absolute minimum ethic that you have in the field of labor and industry. You can do better than that, but if you can't do better than that, you at least have to do that. And then, of course, all your HR principles and processes and practices. So start thinking about these. I've given you a list of 9 key areas that you need to be a learned person on by the time you walk out of Rizvi Management Institute. These are the things that you should be ready with. This is a chart. Since this presentation is going to come to you, I won't go through the entire story behind it, but it gives you a phase of 40 years or so. I've been in industry for 43 years, right from 1974 to date. And you can see through the 70s, 80s, 1990s, and in the 2000s, how things have changed. And on the vertical axis, you'll find the 3 key areas. What are the external shocks that forced HR to change its role? What was the role then? What is the role now? And therefore, what are the focal areas? Read this at leisure, but you will need to read it and understand what the significant aspects of it are. So let's now move into another dimension, and that is, what do you think are the normal HR set of rules, role, and responsibilities? The first one is manpower planning, recruitment, and selection, and whatever else goes with it. The second is compensation and benefits. The third one is industrial relations, union management negotiations, and long-term agreements. Nabila, you'll remember having done your research project on this.
Yes, sir.
Learning and management development, all about training, performance management, performance appraisals, statutory compliances, legal compliances, same thing as understanding labor laws and applying them to your organization. Then there's something called employee engagement, and a lot of you have this kind of love affair with employee engagement. It sounds like a nice thing to talk about. And if you look at those 4 bullet points, they all do this. But then at the end of it all, do employees feel engaged? I don't know. Are you able to resolve their misunderstandings, their disputes, and their conflicts? Are you able to manage their aspirations? Or are you just doing it because the Factories Act requires you to handle their health, safety, welfare? You damn well have to provide a canteen if you've got more than 250 workers in a factory, whether you like it or not. So what are you talking about? Are you doing an employee engagement program and running a factory? And I mean running a canteen? Not necessarily. Then you have HR administration. Neeraj, HRIS. No, was it you or was it Kedar who did this project?
So me, sir.
Yeah, Neeraj, right? No, Kedar.
Kedar, sir.
Okay, well, there you are. And managing the rules and discipline, employee facilities, everything related to the administration of a company. Then you have succession planning. Every employee in due course of time will either retire, resign, or die. My boss in Johnson & Johnson, as I said, used to say this. There are only 3 ways a person can leave a company. Either he retires, resigns, or dies. Resigns includes being thrown out. There is no 4th way a person can leave a company. And therefore, every employee has to come and go. Like the old Hindi songs used to say, Ana aur jana to rehta hi hai duniya mein. Now, if there is jana, then you need somebody. The business has to survive and grow beyond an employee's coming and going. So how do you find out who's the next person to settle into that person's job? And if every person is doing a job, then every person has to have a replacement ready. That's what we call succession planning. It's not so easy. अरे वो उससे junior था, उसी के साथ 5 साल काम किया, इसलिए उसी को रख लो काम पर. That's not good enough. तो उसी को promote कर दो. That's the old style of running organizations. And then you have exit management. We've spoken about this just now. Competencies. There are a set of 7 or 8 competencies in addition to all these key things that we talk about as HR role and responsibilities. And you need to start studying and learning and understanding these. Leadership, ethical practices. Third is having a business acumen. Somebody said just now as I was going through the beginnings of this lecture about business acumen, you better know what your understanding of your organization is. I remember one of the audience here in this, not amongst the students, is a gentleman who was my marketing head in an organization I worked for Wartsila Diesel. He's in this audience just now. And when I joined, we wanted some project engineers. In those days, there was no Monster and Naukri. So I released an advertisement in the newspapers, got something like 1,000 applications, and all were from companies like Philips and Videocon and this and that. All engineers, all having assembled TV sets and lightings and this and that. And when I went up to him with this thappa of shortlisted 100 applications, he said, Pradeep, this is not what I want. I want people who have been in the business of what we call power plants, capital intensive industry. And therefore start looking for people who have worked with Larsen and Toubro, start looking for people who have worked with Atlas Copco, start looking for people who have worked with a bunch of Bharat Heavy Electricals. These are the types of companies. You need to understand what this organization's real needs are. Relationship management. We all think it's important and a nice subject. It's not just being goody-goody. Relationship means understanding exactly what he or she wants and being able to ensure that this is what is consistent with your ethics as well as your organization's ethics. Consultation. Now, this is not consultation like in McKinsey or something like that. This is consultation where an organization needs to be able to clearly walk across to its employees and say, hey, look, what you're doing is wrong. What you think you should be doing is this. That means being able to advise. Do a critical evaluation. Don't get too friendly just because a person happens to be a good friend of yours. Who knows? We talked about that Me Too complaint case just now. Who knows if that boy who is supposed to be sending obscene messages to a lady in your organization, if that boy happens to be a good friend of yours, are you going to take a lenient view? Think about it. Issues, if it has to be criticized, if it has to be done with, you have to do it with tact. You have to do it very clearly. That the person has to go, person has to go. If he has to be punished, he damn well has to be punished. There's no two ways about it. Critical evaluation. Cultural effectiveness. Every time there is a change in an organization, something somewhere happens as a result of which the culture gets shaken up. A new boss comes in. A new set of employees comes in. Every year in a company that I used to work for, we used to get a whole bunch of new engineer trainees coming in. When there are 25 or 30 new boys or girls coming into the organization, you are going to definitely find the existing people wondering, hey, now these naya jawan, nayi umar ki nayi fasal aa gayi hai, so how are these people going to manage and what is going to happen to us? Is the company now going to overlook us and start doing nice things for these people? And the 8th is communication. Your communication skills are going to be crucial and critical in your job as an HR person. And now we come to this thing that we fancily worldwide have started calling new normal. The new normal, have you understood what it means? It just means that this is going to be the standard. Like maybe 50 years ago or 20 years ago or 30 years ago, we used to say the standard thing is, go back to your parents, for example, or go back one generation ago, and whenever he or she went to work, हम काम पर जा रहे हैं, मी घरी बसणार नाही, कामावर जायचंय. Where does calm mean? Calm is to the factory. There was nothing called going to offices. The work was there in the factory, and therefore it was an understood thing that a person going to work is going to a factory. Can you think about it? Now, of course, everybody says, forget it, I don't want to work in a manufacturing plant. I don't want to work in a factory. I only want to work in an air-conditioned office. But those were days, 25, 30, 40 years ago, when the, the, the core of business in India was manufacturing. And therefore, going to work means going to the factory to work. हम काम पर जा रहे हैं मतलब कहाँ जा रहे हैं? फैक्ट्री में जा रहे हैं, जहां भी हो फैक्ट्री. Today, the new normal is that everything remains the same, but you've got to now shift pace and start thinking about how things should be done differently. And that's what we're going to talk about, and that's the core subject of this. I thought I'd set the base in the first 30 minutes or so of what you people need to definitely prepare for yourself for as professionals in HR. But new normal. So our friend Uddhav Thackeray has also come up with this mission, begin again. I'm taking it on as another way. There are some realities in WFH. Does anybody know what WFH is?
Work from home, sir.
Work from home. So if it's work from home, the reality bites are first. Nobody knows how long COVID-19 is going to last. Show me one person on the face of this globe who can predict that COVID-19 will go away, let us say by the time it's Diwali or Dashera or Ramzan next year or Christmas this year. Can you predict that? No. Nobody knows. And it's going to last much longer, and therefore it's here to stay. Maybe 10 years ago or 5 years ago, there was a Hindi movie that came over. I'm sure some of you may have seen it. Atithi tum kab jaoge. वो अतिथि जो है वो जाता नहीं है, उसको भगाना पड़ता है. तो कोविड को भगाना पड़ेगा, and you and I are not qualified for भगाविंग the COVID. And therefore you will have to start accepting its long-term effects. And therefore businesses are now looking at ways to realign themselves. Hey, how the hell do we manage business in such a situation? I'm sure you would have read reports in the newspapers and on TV, you may have heard about it. That industry is now talking about, TCS is now saying that by 2025, 25% of its employees need to come to the office. 75% can stay at home and work. Sorry. Considering that its employee strength is about 4.5 lakhs, what numbers are we talking about? 1 lakh to be in the office, 3.5 lakhs going to work from home. If you have the good fortune to work with a company like TCS, what's the kind of responsibilities you will have? How will you connect with 3.5 lakh people? Tough. And work from home or not work from home will depend on the nature of the business. So there is a big statement which talks about typically certain businesses like real estate, hospitality, travel and tourism, construction, they cannot work from home. Can you imagine a building construction going on where you just have to be there at the site? You can't sit at home and press buttons on a computer and hope that the building will get constructed. It doesn't happen. But there are a set of types of businesses where work from home is possible. And I've given a list, fairly exhaustive. The other thing is only certain types of work can work at home. Not all. There will be certain things that you will jolly well have to do. For example, and when you say HR and one of your administration responsibilities is security, can you imagine a watchman saying, मेरे को work from home करना है, हम घर पर बैठेंगे, यहाँ बैठ के 10 किलोमीटर दूर मेरा फैक्ट्री है, उसका हम रखवाली करेंगे? Can you imagine doing that? And therefore the watchman has to damn well go to the office, to the place of work. There's no options there. Another thing is, There's a lovely word called teamwork. I used to like doing team working, but teamwork and work from home don't match. If they don't match, then the obvious thing is like a boy having two girlfriends who one has to lose. Tell me, who decides who's going to work from home? Is it the head of the company, or is it the departmental manager, or the employee himself says, "नहीं, हम घर ही से काम करेंगे"? Who decides? Start thinking. And if you have a role to play in this, if, as an HR person, if you have a role to play in it, whom will say कि तुम घर पर रहो, हम नहीं रहेंगे घर पर, हमको ऑफिस ही में जाना है. So what role do you have in this? You don't. But somewhere along the line, somebody in business has to make a decision. So it will become what I call an enforced practice. You will jolly well have to work from home if you are told to. You may not have a choice. You can't say नहीं आज मैं work from home करूँगा, कल मैं ऑफिस आ जाऊँगा, वो भी मुमकिन नहीं है. And work from home naturally means that you've got to be computer literate. Can you imagine in the agricultural sector, for example, can you imagine work from home? Not possible. And therefore, these issues have to come up. And another very interesting thing, because you're working from home, you're operating what we call virtually, and therefore, boss तो नहीं है, वो थोड़ी देख पाएगा. He's not breathing down my shoulder, down my neck, morning, evening, 10 times a day. क्या हुआ, कब तक आए, कितना किया, कितना क्यों नहीं किया, आज तुमको रेट ठहरना पड़ेगा, 6 बजे के बाद घर नहीं जा सकते हो. You won't have all this. The supervision will not be there. Because there's no boss watching you. How do you manage? You have to become your own boss, right? Some of these things that we call benefits, problems, and expectations. Everybody would like to work from home because there's no commuting involved. I can sit at home, I can look after I can show that I'm working, but I'm actually looking at the television. All those kinds of things you can think of. But I'll forget about watching the television. These three are real big, four benefits. You sure have more time with the family. 1 hour each way going to work and back. So 2 घंटे 24 में से तो घर ही पे हम लोग बिताएंगे ना. In addition to the time that I'm not going out anywhere, I'm sitting at home. I can decide when to do work. I can decide when to do work. All my boss is really interested in results. What are the problems with working from home? Have a look at these. Home cannot substitute the office. Employees are going to feel lonely. And they're going to naturally feel lonely because don't you people feel lonely sitting at home? Even as students, won't you like to go back to the institute and spend time with your batchmates and sit in class and whatever else you people do, and probably go and have a chai and a snack in the canteen from time to time? Go across to Anna's for your dosa. Now Anna's is also closed down, I suppose. He's got no bloody dhanda going now. And two key things that are going to happen. Real important. Your costs are going to go up. The costs of electricity and internet connectivity. So I've put down what I think is problems. And now I go back to those three things that I'd spoken on the second slide or the third slide. How are you going to manage employees' expectations? Those three fancy things: happy workplace, social interactions, and secure future. We talked about good job, we talked about a good place of work, we talked about good salary, करियर ग्रोथ वो तो हो ही जाएगा, लेकिन ये कौन संभालेगा? कभी सोचा है? वर्क फ्रॉम होम है ना, so who's going to handle the happy workplace thing? Who's going to have manage the social interactions? Who's going to manage secure future for them? In private industry, I must confess, you can never predict the future of an employee. Never. The primary reason is those organizations will always look for results, they will always look for improvement, they will always look for growth. If you can't provide that, or if you can't do things that the company considers as minimum requirements, they're going to say, look, I don't want you. I'll find somebody else who can do a better job. As simple as that. And therefore, job security is something that is not guaranteed in private industry. If you're looking for only job security, then go and join the government. Get into a public sector undertaking of some kind, you'll remain a clerk or maybe an officer because you got an MBA, and you can work in the ward office of the municipality or something. You'll get guaranteed job security. And there's nobody still watching over when you come to work, when you go, what you do. Like if you remember, I used to talk about in class, half the time the people are going outside and going to the panpatti wala and spending time over there cutting chai marte. If that's job security for you, great. Then nobody is going to ask you for results. What the hell did you do from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m.? No answers. The challenges and imperatives for you and me as HR people. First is, here are the challenges. Looking after your employees. Help them to unplug from work. Understand that they're sitting at home. Therefore, there will be domestic compulsions. There will be matters, there will be distractions, and there will be commitments that they have. And within those times that they find, managing the 24-hour cycles of life, 24 hours of life, you have to manage to do your work also, because that's where the paisa comes from. And without people helping you and connecting with you, you'll still have to remain motivated. Can you see the challenge? It's so obvious, it's black and white. And the last one is, on top of all this, there will be this extra kharcha. And I've only looked at one aspect of kharcha. There are so many other kharchas that will happen because you have to work from home now for the next 5 years, let's say. Can you imagine if COVID-19 lasts for 5 years, what will happen? You got a job, fine, but do it. And for the next 5 years, if you're going to bear those expenses, then some way or the other, an organization will have to try and find ways of mitigating your suffering. If your costs of electricity are going to go up, then the company will have to think of ways of making changes. Look at some of the imperatives now. An imperative means ये तो होना ही होना है. Night follows day and day follows night. First one is whether the employee's manager or the head of department contacts him or not, you have to communicate with them. You have to make sure that they're connected with the organization. If you don't, who will? You are their sort of akhri sahara. And in this world, your interpersonal communications are the only thing that will keep you connected. You can't keep going to every person's house and saying, hi, how are you? Kaise ho? Chai pilao? Kab shab karenge aadhe ghante? That's not on. That's not what you're paid for. But in your connection, there has to be a certain, what shall I say, a certain familiarity, a certain willingness, a certain eagerness to be able to connect with them and find out what's going on, what are they doing, what are they not doing, where are the problems that they're facing. And of course, this last thing. I spoke a lot about body language when we were talking about interviewing in January, February, after you've done your CAP 1. It's irrelevant. body language. Even if you're wearing the best perfume and the best jeans or the best suit, that's not important. It's absolutely inconsequential. Your communication has to be what you write and what you speak to them. That's all. That is an imperative that you will have to polish, and it will have to be polished like a diamond. What are the likely changes in HR policies? And for this, I'm going to put to you something that I read just 10 days ago. Companies will probably have to adopt variable pay structure. So there'll be one type of pay structure. The salary is the same. Let's say if you and I are the same qualifications, same experience, we'll probably get the same money at the end of the day. But the way it will be given will be different if I'm sitting at home, but you are going to the office and working. So the companies will have to do this kind of balancing act to make sure that those people who are in the same band get the same salary. But because you're working from home, there'll have to be a different way of paying that. And for those who are not working at home, you'll have to find a different way. Neither there will be a huge uproar within the organization. Probably reimbursements for these expenses. Look at this list. And it's only a guess kind of list. Let's say over a period of time, 10 years later, you still have work from home going on. There will be families who will have children. There will be domestic help who has to be paid salary. You'll have to buy some home office furniture. It will be a home office furniture in the sense you'll need tables and chairs for you to sit on and work on your computer. All these things cost money. And then companies will have to start looking at what are the implications as far as income tax is concerned. When you create a structure, there is income tax involved. At the highest level, the income tax is 34% of your CTC. Think about that at the highest level. Probably traditional benefits like conveyance allowance and companies housing, car, driver, fuel, all that will go. अभी आने जाने का सवाल है ही नहीं तो फिर गाड़ी काहे के लिए चाहिए तुमको गाड़ी नहीं चाहिए तो फिर आई एम withdrawing that benefit. They may give it to you in another form, but all that is gone. I can't see organizations having company-driven cars and company's driver driving you to work and back and then taking mem sahab out for khana or for kitty parties. That won't happen now. You'll have to create some kind of a system for special leave for self-quarantine. And of course, there will be revisions in some of these areas. Okay, let's go ahead. Now I come to the June 10th. There was an article, I'll mail it to all of you as soon as we finish this. There was some newspaper, I forgot now which. They met 111 CHROs, Chief HR Officers from companies. And they interviewed all 111 of these guys. And that newspaper report was published on 10th of June, 10 days ago. And they made a set of issues and they said, this is what's going to happen. The challenges that confront us. Restructure CTC, cancel performance pay, incentives, promotions, sab band karo. Conveyance reimbursement, I've just talked to you about. And you'll have to change your policies as far as Mediclaim insurance is concerned. Neeraj, here comes your Mediclaim insurance. Neeraj, have you gone to sleep?
No, sir.
Thank goodness. Mediclaim insurance, transportation, WFH allowance. And if these are challenges, then along with them will come improvements. And here is where you guys have got to play a role. Everything that you communicate from HR will have to be agile and it will have to be purposive. Think about what the meaning of these two terms is. Agile means there is an agility, there is an ability of flexibility that you have. And the purposive communication, which means it has a certain definite purpose and objective. You're not communicating with employees just to say, hi, hello, how are you, kaise ho, maze mein ho na. That's not the idea. That helps, but that's only 5%. You'll have to create training. Most of the training will go away. You won't have any of these fancy training programs that you used to think of at one time. Communication skills will now have to do with teaching people how do you run a virtual classroom, how do you do e-learning, how do you do webinars, and the focus will have to be on well-being of employees. The employees cost and productivity will always have to be uppermost in your mind. Ultimately, you're paid by the employer. The company is given you a job in order to look after the employees. Look after also means managing creatively all these costs and making sure that their productivity continues to improve. So we finally come to the question of what are your additional responsibilities? None of these comes under recruitment or industrial relations or statutory compliances or any of those other things. But it's all there. None of these 7 or 8 things, 10 things that I showed you in the early stages of this class, your additional tasks are going to be here. Understand what are the new business concerns and imperatives, and you will surely will have to walk into an organization. You know, when you look for a job, one of the things that they will ask you, what do you know about my company? And if you're able to answer that question, forget about what your knowledge of HR is. If it's there, fine, you will get a chance to display it. But your first answer will have to be solid on this thing. What is your understanding of our business? Why are you applying to our company for a job? And you need to know what are their imperatives. And imperatives means what are the things that are holding their entire attention. Competition, it could be customers, it could be product failures, it could be a हजार things that go on around. Cost of raw material. Those may not have anything to do with you directly, but you need to understand what it means. What are the implications of the cost of raw material going up? We keep talking about this medical search for vaccines right now, ever since COVID reared up its head. Worldwide, nobody has been able to find a vaccine as yet. At least there is no satisfactory answer. There are some rumors somewhere somebody has done something. Can you imagine an intelligent society, an educated society, a scientifically rich society like the whole world is still not able to find a vaccine for this illness? So where is all your intelligence? Where is all your education? And we can't find answers for that. That's an imperative for every company in the medical world. It's an absolute primary imperative. You know, one of my companies called Johnson & Johnson has now started making swabs. The swabs that they put into your mouth, and they used to cost something like 21 rupees per swab in the market. All right. In India, they've done it at their factory in Mulund, and they now sell swabs for 70 paise, 70 paise each. SWAB is the name of the word, swab. It checks out your saliva and then decides how. I was speaking to somebody from J&J just the other day, and they told me, where is 21 rupees and where is 70 paise, 70 paise? Now that is what we call innovation. That is what we call finding a way that is affordable. You buy each swab every time it goes into your throat because the doctor wants to check out your saliva. 21 rupees. 70 paise is obviously a better bet. And that's been done here in the Johnson & Johnson Mulund plant. So you don't have to go far away to the US to find out what J&J is doing. Recruitment will be reduced or suspended. Why should they be hiring more people, more and more people? Fine, business will grow. But have your current employees already been touching the peaks of their effectiveness and productivity? And if not, what's the point in hiring more and more people who are working only at 60% efficiency or 70% efficiency? I'd rather move people into challenging positions and say, okay, now you produce, otherwise time is up. And therefore, recruitment and training are both likely to be very, very low importance. And therefore, all of you who are dreaming of getting jobs into training and into recruitment and into recruitment consulting and all that, better start thinking twice. They may not be needing so many people for recruitment. And therefore, your KRAs and your concern areas are going to change. I mentioned somewhere where HODs or the managers, the bosses of every employee, they're going to become distant because they're not there now. And you don't have anybody watching over you all day, every day. So if that becomes distant, then the employees are all going to feel as if they're lost. Now, how do you make sure that the employees still remain connected and committed? A challenge for you as HR people. Therefore, you will have to get whatever new employees you may be hiring, you will have to help them to understand the current culture of the company. And two other areas, develop that authenticity and build trust. People will look up to you and look at you as a god if they start seeing you as helping them. You want praise, you want acknowledgement, you want appreciation, it will come from your own employees, provided you do all the right things within the parameters of your own organization. And the last thing is you have to be able to communicate effectively with all employees. Now, these are the 6 things that I see as additional tasks. One of them is listed out there in the beginning where I talked about the 10 different roles and responsibilities of HR. And in each of these 6, I've got 2 or 3 pages following. After this is over, either Umar sir or myself, we will pass this entire presentation to you so that you'll be able to read through the whole thing. So I'm just preempting. We've got something like 35 minutes to go. If I can't complete the entire presentation, I will certainly mail it to you and you better read the whole thing. I will have to leave some time for Q&A, the last 10 minutes. So if it's 5 o'clock just now, and it is, I have something like 20 minutes to talk. So let's go a little faster on this. The first one, understanding business concerns and imperatives. Business concern number 1. Why change the company's culture? It's there. So why change it? As soon as you have this WFH coming in, you're going to have half the people at home, half the people sitting here in the office. Privacy and confidentiality is lost. These questions more or less ask themselves. You don't even have to think seriously about them. Are there any benefits of flexible working? 9 to 6 routine चल रहा था, अच्छा था. New technology will add to costs, precisely the kinds of costs that I spoke about earlier, for buying new laptops and computer equipment and your internet connectivity expenses and all that. Data security will be at risk. And we said this twice before, there will be little or no direct supervision for the work that you're doing. Obviously, these will get reduced. Work focus, productivity, and cohesiveness. You still have to ensure business growth. And the last thing is you have to adhere to business commitments as well as your expectations from customers. How will you manage to do all this? So I call this understanding business concerns and imperatives. How the hell are you going to manage that? That's number 1, understanding what their concerns are. Second is, your major concern areas and KRAs will get modified. First one, you're primarily a people manager. So if you know and understand your employees' concerns, you should be able to solve all their problems. Well-being important to you, motivation important, their commitment and dedication, their performance and productivity. What are the implications for their career? If bosses are going to be so distant and irrelevant and hardly in touch with their employees, the bosses are going to say, कि वो काम कर रहा है, जब तक he's giving me results, that's all I want. I'm not interested in anything else. Why do I need to meet the person? Why do I need to talk to him every half an hour, morning, evening? दोबारा क्यों हम 10 मिनट 15 मिनट हर एम्प्लॉय के साथ बिताएं? How do you ensure all these things? Engagement and involvement. Some of you wanted to do your SIP and employee engagement. What would you have done if you had to actually go into an organization and talk about engagement and employment and involvement? And retention could be an issue. Retention will be an issue for the simple reason those people who can't really manage this work from home business, they'll say, Baba, it's better I go into some other company, they'll probably pay me less, लेकिन ये झमेला छोड़ दो. So your modified tasks, you need to become your employee's buddy, a kind of resource person. Is the kind of go-to, you are the kind of go-to person at every stage for anything related to work, related to him or her, and you will be the go-to. You will communicate company information, all the other things that I've said. If there are any business decisions that are being taken, I need to specifically and clearly inform my employees. If you are looking at training, then start thinking about how are you going to train people to use those tech tools effectively. Do you know how to do a Skype meeting? How to do a video con? How to do instant messaging? All these are the things, the Zoom meeting itself. Umar sir knows, I still can't manage a Zoom meeting myself. But there you are. Every employee needs to have that ability to do these things. Look at this. If you have to find ways to motivate your employees, you will have to find recreational and leisure facilities and activities. You'll have to keep in touch with them on a 24-hour basis. They will not be able to, obviously you can't keep in touch with them all the time. Otherwise they'll say you're fed up, you're intruding into my private time. सुबह शाम थोड़ी हमसे बात करनी है, but understand where it comes from. Help them to unplug from work. Develop interactive activities to stay connected. Support them in all their health concerns. Mitigate their problems to reduce me time with family. And therefore your modified carriers are going to be like this. Your carriers could be, what kind of training programs did you arrange? How were they conducted? What kind of feedback process did you create to ensure a two-way communication link? How does that link work? It's not a question of technology, it's just how frequently do you meet your people, talk to them. Have you developed a sustainable salary structure, particularly focusing on those people? Do you have a leave policy which manages work done as well as employee expectations? What employee issues did you resolve and how did you do it? So if the boss asks you at the end of the year, कि तुमने क्या किया, किसके लिए तुमको, why should I give you an A rating for your performance? Do you have an A answer for this? What are the elements of a new WFH allowance? What's the roadmap for health and fitness that you have? It's not there now, but what kind of roadmap have you created? If a WFH employee needs medical assistance, what is your contingency plan? These things don't come announced. I'll tell you the story that I remember, and it'll take maybe 5 minutes, but it doesn't matter. In my last job, when I was at Ad Factors PR, there was an employee of ours, one of our account executives. Account meaning she was handling one of the client accounts. She was also doing an MBA at Jamnalar Bajaj. And so she used to work until 6 and then rush over to Bajaj Institute. Her classes there started from 6:30 and went on until 9 o'clock or 9:30 every single day. One day, it so happened, so she used to get home maybe 11:30, God knows where she stayed, maybe at Goregaon or at Andheri or something. Today, she is no longer in that organization. She's already left that company. But I remember a time when at about 1 o'clock at night, I got a call from her batchmate in Bajaj Institute because I just said hi to them once. And that person, for whatever reason, he picked up my number from her. And he called me up and said, "Sir, do you know Suvrata has had an accident?" 1 o'clock at night. I said, "What's the problem?" This girl's name is Suvrata Joshi. What happened? He says between Churni Road and Grant Road, she fell off the train. And she is now admitted in Nair Hospital. I am outside in the hospital, but talking to you. Can you please come over? And she'll need money because Nair Hospital will not be able to manage whatever is required without somebody paying up in advance. If you get a call like that, what would you do? Start thinking, boss. Subrata Joshi today is a very good friend of mine. I still wish her on her birthday. But at that time, it was a case of life or death. For the next 2 months, she was under severe medical treatment, and finally she recovered and came back to work. I rushed over and was at the Nair Hospital at 2 o'clock in the morning. Can you imagine? I have a family over here. Imagine my wife asking me, whether you're going over at 2 o'clock in the morning? तो गाड़ी का चाबी लेके जा रहे हो, पैसा भी लेके जा रहे हो, क्या मुसीबत है? What explanations do you have for a person for a situation like this? बाद में, of course, she paid me all the money that I had spent. That's not the issue. But think about this. How do you do that? How do you make sure that lady is, I mean, for whatever happens in future, that person will always they feel indebted towards me. She now works for another newspaper, in fact, as the chief correspondent for Mumbai. Talk about feeling for people. Here it comes from. Now, this is an interesting thing. HODs are going to lose relevance. Relevance simply because they're just not there. They'll probably make a phone call once in a day and find out kya kaam kiya. Ek zamana tha when the HOD was responsible for all this. He or she would typically mirror the boss, mirror the CEO or the owner, and they provide all the systems and the methods and the raw material and everything that's required for the employees. And they do all those things that managers are supposed to do. We did it when we did our OB class last year. Organize, lead, control, coordinate, supervise, etc. Come COVID. Now they do all this. And as far as the employees is concerned, they only want results. Subah se sham kya kiya, kitna paisa aaya, how much into my drawer today. That is the focus. And to that extent, therefore, they feel completely dissociated from their employees. And the employees feel dissociated from them, which is even worse because it's like becoming orphaned. Boss-subordinate relationships could get altered. Your relationships with that boss could get altered. And think about the worst thing that can happen. Even reporting relationships of that person could change. If you have to imagine a situation, you have, let's say, a sales network, and you're doing sales for, let's say, some pharma company or a FMCG company. Now you're handling HR. You have an office in Calcutta. Because the boss cannot constantly be in touch with that person and he'll only send out his sales report at the end of the day, or what they call DCRs, daily call reports. That guy, the boss of that employee, is going to finally assign the regional manager sitting in Calcutta कि इस पर जरा नजर रखो, वो काम ठीक से कर रहा है या नहीं. Yes or no? Would you not do the same thing? If it was your man there in Calcutta, and Calcutta is something like 2,000 kilometers away from here, you can't get flying up and down every time just to find out whether the fellow is doing a good job. So you'll have somebody locally over there, and that relationship with your boss will get lost, and that person will have a new relationship with the regional manager over there. So if he keeps the regional manager happy, the regional manager will give a good report to your functional boss here sitting in Mumbai. Can you imagine how a reporting channel is changed? Start thinking. How can HR help distanced employees become their ghost manager? I said this before, become their buddy. Connect periodically with them. And help the HODs managers to understand what their leadership style is. Help people to understand and absorb the company culture. Now, what is the meaning of this? I've done this in class with all of you, and therefore I don't need to repeat myself, but I couldn't avoid it. It's a pattern of shared basic assumptions. It is a shared meaning that everybody has for the same situation. Everybody understands culture the same way within an organization. Don't you understand your own home culture just the way you and your family members exactly the same way? How does that happen? Over a period of time, you build up that culture and start understanding what culture is. And culture, what it is. So there's a little bit of definition over here, but read it, understand it. What is your organization's culture? How do things happen in your organization? How are problems solved? How are decisions made? How do people communicate? If there's a conflict of some kind, how is it handled and resolved? How are deals negotiated? Even you as an HR person whose dream is to become a recruiter, how do you negotiate salary with a candidate? It will differ. It will be shown depending on how you negotiate what your culture is. What are the dress norms that you have in the organization? What kind of stories do people talk about? Do you have a set of formal rules and regulations? Are there codes of behavior? Are there rituals and rites that you practice as a standard practice? Who manages tasks and how are they managed? What jargon do you use in office or in amongst friends? And of course, the jokes that you alone will know. It's like I've said in the class also, you people have your own WhatsApp groups. I'm not a member of that WhatsApp group, but you will have your own jokes and you crack them and you understand them. As soon as you see that there's a message from some batchmate of yours, you know it has to be a joke. Where does that come from? It's a part of your culture. Your job as an HR person is going to be to induct new employees into your culture. First, understand your culture yourself. Then hire the people who start thinking the way top management works. Instill them to top management's way of doing things. Encourage internalizing beliefs and assumptions. Build connections with your employees. Your employees must know and believe that HR is their first contact point. Authenticity and trust. 2 pages on this. I won't go through too much. You've already done this in class, so understand the importance of this. Can you exhibit integrity and your honesty and your truthfulness in your word and deed every time? When they talk to you or you talk to them, can they see trust, or can they see somebody who's got some ideas in his or her mind about doing something beyond? There are some nefarious intentions. Are you prepared to sacrifice your self-interest for the organization's good? What are the benefits of trusting people? Well, there are three big benefits. To read through them, I won't belabor the point. I come to this, which is the sixth one, namely interpersonal communication. I've said this in class, I'm repeating it at the risk of repetition. All formal business communication happens only in English. No matter what your mother tongue is, no matter what your language you like to speak in or write in, you have no option but to write and speak good English in an organization. End of story. There is no other option to it. You can never say that no, mera English weak hai. I didn't go to convent education. I didn't study enough textbooks in English. I don't know Ren and Martin. I still refer to Ren and Martin, my friends. Would you believe it? Your spoken language capability. How will you handle a phone call or a remote meeting? Before you even start writing a mail to somebody, if you're going to have a 5-minute conversation with him or her, how are you going to handle it? And it's an official conversation. I'm not talking about a street corner meeting. Every conversation has to be specific. You cannot confuse whoever that listener is. It has to be an intelligent conversation. Again, something I've always emphasized in class. What you understand, what you think you know, namely your point of view, and of course, do you have a solution or a suggestion for this? People will be able to see through by what you talk and how you talk exactly whether you have the right aptitude, the skills, the knowledge, and the willingness. If you have it, great, show it. If you don't, then you'll have to find a way of making sure that skill and knowledge comes to you. Look at what and why you should speak. What? It will be facts, information, data. What you think you know are your perceptions. What you feel are your emotions and moods. And what you want to tell someone is the entire knowledge base that you have. As far as why is concerned, it's either to inform somebody something, to convince them, to involve them, or to invite them to join into some kind of common cause. When you come to written communication, your emails again cannot confuse. Think carefully before you write anything. The consequences of writing going wrong are very serious. In written communication, also the same things that I showed you in the spoken communication. A little more gyan on writing skills. You're not trying to impress when you write. You have to make an impact. Know what you're intending to convey. Use correct grammar and spellings. Use a dictionary. Again and again, I keep repeating this, but I cannot do it often enough. Unless you know the meaning, don't use big words. Use simple sentences. And once you've said it, you cannot withdraw it. Therefore, you better be sure of what you're writing. So much for my presentation today on those 6 skills that you need to improve. It's time for Q&A, and you have something like 10 minutes. You can unmute yourselves and start talking to me. Are there any questions? Anything you haven't understood? Anything you want me to emphasize? Anything you want me to elaborate? I've used some complicated English words like alleviate and mitigate. They both mean the same thing. It means reduce the impact of, just in case you didn't understand it. Any questions? Otherwise,
Sir, I have a question.
yeah.
So, when you're onboarding new employees in this situation, so how to instill the work culture in them? Because there will be lack of physical setting and social interaction with the current employees. So the new employee might not know how to handle, like how to work in this work culture. So how to like handle it in such a situation?
Okay. Go back to the page that I talked about, and I'll do that right away so that you'll quickly answer this question. Look at these 10 or 12 things that I've written over here. If you give that person a talk for 1 hour on each of these, I mean, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 10 minutes on each of these, how do you handle problems in the company? How are decisions made? What are the formal rules and regulations in the organization? What is the common code of behavior? I'll tell you something very interesting. I'd come from an entirely corporate background when I went to the Indian School of Business, ISB at Hyderabad. 2001. Now, this was an institute which was, I mean, media all over the world had gone to town talking about this being a rich school, everybody thinking no end of themselves as students. And of course, it was supported by some of the best faculty in the whole world. When I went over there, people met me, got introduced to me, and they started talking to me, referring to me by first name. For me, I had been through the corporate grind for over 40 years by then. I started working in 1974. This was 2001. So, okay, 37 years. For me, being referred to by first name when I was obviously much older than them, in some cases perhaps 20, 25 years older, it was a bit of a surprise for me. But that institute had already started functioning by the time I joined them. And therefore, being referred to as Pradeep by everybody, even the students were calling me Pradeep. And I couldn't understand this, so I spoke to the dean, in fact. And the dean was none other than a person called Sumantra Ghoshal. I said, Sir, I have a question for you. Said, yeah, go ahead. Why is everybody talking, referring to me in first name terms? You know, I can't think of a more brilliant reply than that. Sumantra Ghoshal himself said, Pradeep, why are you calling me sir? Think about it. You have to earn your respect. Until then, you will be one of them. Does it give you some message about how culture gets built?
Yes, sir.
So start with this. You refer to some of these areas. There are organizations where I have worked with organizations where people are always referred to as Mr. Gogte or Mr. So and so, Mr. So and so. You are Mr. Dhon. Neeraj is Mr. Yadav. He's not Neeraj. So now, when you go into an organization, you find something like this happening, you really start wondering, yaar, ye kya musibat hai? Because you are used to a particular way of doing things, and suddenly there's a different way. It takes time, but you got to adjust to it. So it can be done, provided, of course, you decide to make this thing happen. Have I answered your question, Kela?
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay. So, any other questions? No, everybody I think has gone to sleep or switched off. All the best to you. I've got one last page before I call off. Have a look at this. I asked you to step into your employee's shoes right at the beginning of this speech, this class. Do you know how and where they pinch? It depends on these issues, your ability to think for them. your concern for your employees, your sensitivity to their grievances. Your ethics maturity levels are important. Your willingness to become a good Samaritan to your employees. And your knowledge has to exhibit itself in everything that you do and say. Start thinking about all these things. Become a principle. A book that I'll always recommend that all of you should read. If you've read it once, read it again, by a person called Stephen Covey. And it talks about principle centered leadership. Read that book. It's available on Amazon also. Last time I picked it up for 600 or 700 rupees. Principle centered leadership. Brilliant book. And it tells you what are those principles of life. What are the things that you'll depend on every time you have to do something, whether it's at home, whether it's at work, whether it's in the field of play, whether you're sitting in a local train along with unknown passengers. Now, of course, you'll have to sit with social distancing. But everything has a principle. Understand those principles of life. Okay, this was my last slide, and therefore, all the best to all of you. Until the next class that we have, take care, stay at home,
Thank you,
stay
sir.
safe, and be healthy.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Pradeep
Thank
sir.
you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Hello. Pradeep sir.
Swapna, bye.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Bye.